And now, honoring Black history, sharing our stories. Brought to you by Hamler Curtis Funeral Home and Crematory.
Black History Month is an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month.
Each year is given a designated theme. 2023's theme is Black Resistance. By resisting, African Americans continue to mobilize resources and shape social movements to create a space for Black Americans to thrive. We invite everyone to join us in exploring the histories of Black freedom movements, from slavery and abolition to other ongoing struggles for civil and human rights.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight for this year's Honoring Black History Month special. I'm Charmaine Brown.
And I'm Jermaine Farrell.
Well, we begin tonight in Roanoke, where a dark history is now seeing the light of day.
Yeah, now anyone driving or walking by Franklin Road and Mountain Avenue will know about the lynching of Thomas Smith.
WFXR's Amanda Kenny shows us how new historical markers unveiled in the city.
I think a lot of people, first of all, don't know the story.
The story of Thomas Smith,
unjustly killed, murdered, lynched,
made headlines in the 1890s.
It was a mindset that any darky, any black man that did anything to a white child or woman, they're going to get killed.
Smith, a black man, was accused of beating and robbing a white woman. She couldn't positively identify Smith as the suspect, but it didn't stop a mob of reportedly 4,000 people from surrounding the jail, demanding revenge.
When you have a mob mentality, nobody can stop it.
The mayor is said to have tried to protect Smith, but the mob turned into a riot. Many were killed and injured, yet the mob won.
It's the mob that took him and lynched him. And then it was the mob that took his body down after they had riddled it with bullets and down to the river and then burned him.
The worst part of the story is that a few years later, they actually realized that they had the wrong person.
But Smith's death will live on through this historical marker posted in the exact spot he was lynched.
We're doing this for the community because we want to make a community better.
Dr. Brenda Hale and Bill Bespich started the journey to get the marker 3 years ago. They wanted Smith's story to be remembered.
It's also important in terms of how those things that happened back in those days continue to affect where we are today in terms of race relations and understanding each other.
The National Equal Justice Initiative Community Remembrance Project Coalition would need to give its approval for Roanoke to get its marker, after dozens of local people joined to research the events surrounding Smith's death. They submitted a request to join the Remembrance Project in Montgomery, Alabama.
And we heard back from them within 60 minutes.
Oh, wow.
They were that impressed with what we were doing here in Roanoke.
Now, not only is there the historical marker in Roanoke, but soil from the spots where Smith was lynched and burned by the river are on display at the Legacy Museum in Montgomery. And the historical marker serves as a reminder to the community.
We have to face that reality that it did happen, and hopefully no more lynchings will take place here in Roanoke. We learn from that, but also we have to learn we must work with the police. We must work with the sheriff's department. So we have to work with everybody so we can save some lives.
Both Dr. Hale and Bespich agree. Lynchings are happening to black men, women, and children today. We just don't call it that. So even centuries later,
we've taken a very important step in the right direction, and we still have a lot more steps to go.
The fight for equality isn't over. In Roanoke, Amanda Kenny, WFXR News.
Now, Smith is one of 2 black men lynched in Roanoke. The coalition is now researching the lynching of another man. That's William Lavender.
And the coalition also hopes to get approval for his historical marker as well in the spot where he died.
Yeah, that was a tremendous story by Amanda there. Now we head down to Pittsylvania County, where one family searching for a place to celebrate their big events got more than expected for when they bought a house just outside of Gretna. It turned out to be much more worth than what they paid for it.
Absolutely. WFXR's Evan Johnson explains.
Just off Highway 40 in Pittsylvania County on Riceville Road sits this white 3,200 square foot home on 10.5 acres of land called Sharswood.
Really going past it, I always thought, oh my God, that's a scary house. Like, I can't imagine who lives in there.
The Miller family grew up not too far from here. In fact, they passed by this huge home often.
I didn't really pay much attention to it because on the other side of the street there was a house with dogs. So, you know, I would always be concerned with those dogs over there, trying to ease past those dogs.
But when this house went on the market, it was Air Force veteran Fred Miller's sister, Karen, who paid close attention.
I said, Fred, that house is for sale. He was like, what house? I said, you know, the house, the big scary house.
I just could not imagine the house that she was talking about. I mean, because again, I just could not imagine this place ever being up for sale. I mean, these kind of places, they don't go up for sale.
Karen and their oldest sister, Deborah, pushed Fred to put in a bid, so he did, reluctantly. $225,000, slightly above asking price. He lost. But then, soon after, this house was back on the market, and Fred's sisters pushed him again to make an offer.
Fred said, if they didn't accept my offer the first time, why do you think they're going to accept it now? I said, we're just going to put in another offer, the same thing, $225,000.
We with your money.
Yeah.
Hey, there you thank you, huh? You hear all this weed and all this other kind of stuff.
But this time, the seller selected Fred's bid.
This is probably my favorite part of the house here.
While digging into the history of this house, now owned by Fred Miller, the family made a shocking discovery. This is part of what used to be a 2,500-acre plantation.
Not in a million years we would even thought that.
I love bringing families together.
Local genealogist Carice Luck-Bremer helped the Miller family uncover something even more jaw-dropping.
Fred and Karen's great-grandmother is Sarah, who was the baby girl of David and Violet.
This is Sarah Miller, born in 1868. Her parents, David and Violet Miller, were slaves here at Sharswood. Sarah is the couple's only child not born into enslavement, but she still lived on this land as her parents stayed and worked as sharecroppers after the end of slavery.
But yeah, this is a contract that my ancestors signed here to stay on as farmhands once slavery ended in 1865. And one thing about this area that kind of gets to me is the fact that they were entitled to 10% of the agriculture of the corn at the time, but that was only after the fattening of the pigs. So the pigs ate first, and then they were able to get 10% of it.
So the pigs are more important than the people?
The pig was more important than the people, yeah, so.
You can see several signatures at the bottom of this labor contract, including one that reads David and wife and 8 children.
And this room here.
Fred showed me around his home, pointing out a few things. A secret hiding spot on the mantle, basement steps believed to be worn from years of slaves using them to bring food into the main house.
Yeah, and this right here was the slave quarters here.
But it's this rundown building in the backyard that matters most to Fred.
This is where my ancestors probably lived in this thing here. They didn't live over there. They had nothing to do with it. I would venture to say I was probably one of the few blacks that ever went into that house there. Yeah, but I know they lived in here.
Fred also took me to the slave cemetery, located adjacent to the home's property line.
You see the indention in the ground? That's a grave. Yeah, that's a grave, and that's a headstone right there.
This sacred ground is filled with rocks, each a headstone marker.
Headstone here, here.
And here.
What's the significance of this grave with that horseshoe there? I don't know.
What he does know is the current owner of this land has offered to give it to him so he can conduct studies. Fred also wants to turn this forest-like property into a dignified resting place for those who he hopes are proud of him.
All the things that they dealt with, hopefully they can find some joy in knowing that now their descendants are now the owners of that property. And
Hopefully this house won't be on the market anytime soon.
No, never again, hopefully.
In Pennsylvania County, Evan Johnson, WFXR News.
Well, the Miller family now wants Sharwoods to be a gathering place, not just for them, but for the entire community, a place where they can learn all about the history of slavery.
Now, they're currently raising $300,000 to restore the slave quarters and clean up the slave cemetery. Now, if you'd like to donate, we have a link to the GoFundMe page that's on WFXRTV.com.
Do not go anywhere. Still to come tonight, taking success to the next level. We introduce you to a national award-winning student who's not straying too far from the community where he's already made a name for himself.
Also, there's a push to preserve the legacy of historic Black Catholic schools in Central Virginia, how alumni are working to keep their school legacy alive. This is Honoring Black History. And welcome back to our Honoring Black History special, our annual edition. Now, when we talk about legacies in the NASCAR world, the Wendell Scott family down in Danville is one that has had a profound impact in the sport of stock car racing, especially for Black athletes. Now, there's a new kid on the block who's looking to blaze a path of his own, and he's doing it with the support of the Scott family and the Wendell Scott Foundation. WFXR Sports' Ryan Moy has more with this story.
Raja Caruth has continued to find success on the track. Now he's on to another milestone in his career, one where he'll be driving in the NASCAR Truck Series with the support and backing of the Wendell Scott Foundation, a foundation that holds a special place in the 20-year-old's heart.
It's really significant and groundbreaking to me because, you know, in school, NASCAR had my heart, and anytime I had the chance to do a project on it, it would be about the Scott family. And so, and one of those accomplishments as a race car driver, but also, getting to the racetrack with his family. And so, to represent them with the legacy that they've built in this sport is amazing. And to add to it, it's a true honor. And the chance to create my own is amazing as well.
Raja Caruth, he's going to be driving the Wendell Scott Foundation Chevy Silverado this year. He's going to be driving our race truck full-time in partnership with GMS Racing and Legacy Motor Club. And so, we're proud of that evolution and that my grandfather's legacy is continuing to open up doors, whether they're intangible or tangible, it's continuing to open up doors. And so we're very proud of that.
The Wendell Scott Foundation helps to provide youth services while supporting educational and cultural development, as well as keeping the legacy of NASCAR's first African-American race car driver alive. Wendell Scott's grandson and founder of the foundation, Warwick Scott, says you have to know where you're from to understand where you're going.
During the portions of his career where NASCAR was in the Jim Crow South and dealing with the civil rights era and all of the atrocities that came with that time. The fact that he went his entire career unsponsored, but was still able to become a Hall of Famer, it says a lot that it's still connected to today's society.
In the days after George Floyd and the social justice upheaval of NASCAR, those atrocities are still being seen today, just in a different form, which is something Caruth is well aware of.
Being a young Black kid in a different state working with people that, A, you do not know, B, are from completely different backgrounds and are of completely different ethnicities and a different culture is extremely hard because, I definitely found myself in moments of what's going, I don't enjoy this, not necessarily the skills and the things I'm doing in pertinence to race car driving or working at the shop, but a lot of the other stuff, it's just do I even need to be here? But as I kind of grew up, I've definitely stood on my word and I'm grown into who I am now, and I'm proud of who I am. So any different obstacles that come in my way, whether it be from inside or outside the industry, from whomever, it doesn't faze me at all.
With drivers like Bubba Wallace before him, following in Scott's footsteps is something Caruth proudly carries with him on and off the track, especially since this isn't just about racing, it's about family.
He's an embodiment of everything that the naysayers would say is impossible. You would say a young African American just from Washington, D.C., you would say that area, that region has no NASCAR synergy. But here he is. You would say, well, how would a young man like him even get the prerequisite training or the opportunity to even enter the sport? But then emerges things like iRacing, right? And so this is how he actually enters the sport. It's through iRacing, and then having a program to enter that opened up doors for him to continue to progress, through NASCAR, which is NASCAR's diversity program. And so him being able to walk through all of those particular doors, of which my grandfather built the framework for each of those doors, is very profound and unique.
Uncle Warwick is great, man, and the whole Scott family, and Shanique and Frank, everybody is awesome and has welcomed me with warm arms over the last couple of years, and I've been extremely thankful for that. And again, just truly blessed to represent them on the racetrack. So it's I can't wait, man.
In Danville, Ryan Moy, WFXR Sports.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Now, Raja and his Wendell Scott Foundation Chevy is going to make their debut this weekend on February 17th as the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series heads to Daytona for the Next Era Energy 250. Nice
story there. And at Appomattox County High School, one senior gears up for his college football career as a Virginia Tech Hokie. But as WFXR's David de Guzman explains, he's already made history before even stepping on the field in Blacksburg by being recognized as one of the best in the entire country.
My life changed. Literally, it changed right in front of my eyes. I couldn't ask for a better high school score because I came from the little dude on the team to now I got something going on now.
Tavorian Copeland has a lot going on right now, getting ready to graduate from Appomattox High School and transition to becoming a Virginia Tech Hokie. It's a future he wasn't sure would ever happen.
It came out of nowhere, honestly. It came in right out of left field. Then I think through me going through my process, I was looking for a home somewhere I could get my education and really play football, the type of football that I wanted to play. And Virginia Tech just fit those standards. And with the family feeling environment, I couldn't ask for a better home.
His journey to becoming a Hokie wasn't easy. Tavorian talks about once being a thin, lanky guy who had trouble putting on weight. Now he's a 6'3", 190-pound linebacker who recently made his verbal commitment to Virginia Tech official.
Putting my name on that dotted line means a lot. I want to show other people that anything's possible. Because just 2 years ago, I did not know what I was going to do after high school. And I was blessed, luckily, to go to a Division I school, and only 2% is able to go to Division I. And I'm truly blessed because not everybody has the chance that I have.
Tavorian is used to success. During his career at Appomattox, he helped the Raiders earn 2 state titles along with 4 10-win seasons. He's also the winner of the prestigious Watkins Award, given to the top African-American high school football player in the country, and recognizes accomplishments on and off the field, including community service.
I've been around giving people my whole life, and community service has never been like a problem for me. It's been a normal part of life. And for me going around helping people, it lined up perfectly. It couldn't line up even more.
Beyond his near-perfect GPA and his contributions on the field, Tavorian hopes he's remembered for the impact he made on others at Appomattox High School.
Just being known as the guy that brung a smile to everybody, the glue brung everybody together. That's what I'll be known as, just a people person, really helping people out and doing all I can do to make sure everybody else is better than I am. Just keep going. That's all I gotta say. Just keep going. Even when things get blurry, just keep going.
Words of advice from a student who now has the title of Premier African American Male Scholar Athlete. Reporting in Appomattox County, David de Guzman, WFXR Sports.
Thank you so much, David. Great work as always. Now, back on December 21st, 2021, the University of Virginia named Tony Elliott as the school's 41st head football coach. In fact, he's the second African-American head football coach in the program's history. Now, Elliott looks at Black History Month as a time for reflection. Now, the month is not lost on Coach Elliott. Not only does he reflect on the special connections to the month, it is also about blazing a trail that has had come right in front of him, even with his own family.
It's an opportunity to think about my aunt, who went to an HBCU that paved the way for me to be able to attend Clemson University, as an undergrad. I think about, my granddad who didn't have an opportunity to go to college, right? That worked extremely hard laying bricks, so that his children could have an opportunity to go to college. And so, I reflect on those things. I don't try to make them bigger than what they need, but ultimately it's a time to reflect and show appreciation.
Now, to see my full exclusive interview with Coach Elliott as he touches on several topics, you can check it out right now on WFXRTV.com. So there you go.
I would
Clemson.
love to see your full interview. Yes, Clemson. I too graduated from Clemson. I got my PhD from Clemson. So go Tigers, right? But it's always great. You and I talk about this all the time. Right. The great accomplishments of the African American community, from sports to architects to inventors. Always such a vast majority. A lot of people just doing some great things.
And the biggest thing is everyone has a story, so it's great to hear these stories and share and educate us all, because there's nothing wrong with learning more about the African American heritage.
Absolutely.
People can't process the idea that people like us could actually condone and go along with something that is so plainly wrong.
2.5 miles in chains, from the boats to the life of bondage. A look back at the slave trail right here in Virginia, so we don't forget the shadow cast on our history.
And providing adequate health care. Coming up, the history behind the first hospital to train African American nurses and doctors in Virginia. This is our annual Honoring Black History Month special.
Welcome back. Well, the city of Richmond carries a legacy tethered to the formation of the United States of America.
Now, Charmaine, many of our founding fathers spent time in Richmond, but, you know, it is also a play of an area that's really the key role in that Atlantic slave trade.
Absolutely. John Rogers shares a part of that legacy that's still visible today.
Along the banks of the James River, you'll find a well-worn path with a painful past. This is the Richmond Slave Trail, a winding 2.5-mile route from the historic Manchester docks to the old slave auction houses in Shockoe Bottom. Throughout the 1700s, enslaved people were unloaded from boats along the river and taken along this path, often still in chains, to the auction houses downtown. But to get a better idea of what it was like back then, we decided to come to the trail at night to get a taste of what these slaves experienced. When the slaves stepped off the boats here centuries ago, the path they walked was similar to this.
You know, the most convenient to getting them from point A to point B, and so it wasn't about their comfort.
Even if it was going through the woods?
Even if it was going through the woods.
Historian Anna Edwards with the Sacred Ground Project says many of these slaves were moved at night.
They wanted to move people so that the general public didn't have to witness. People were not happy. People were often crying. People were often angry.
Edwards says in the 30 years leading up to the Civil War, Richmond had the second largest slave trading market in the nation, and 300 to 350,000 people were sold from Virginia.
Richmond happened to become that particular epicenter for that period, but it means that most people, most black people who can trace some ancestry back to that period, can trace ancestry back to Virginia.
As you traverse the long winding path, you'll encounter Lumpkin's Jail, also known as the Devil's Half Acre, where men, women, and children were punished and imprisoned. Nearby is the African Burial Ground, where many enslaved people lie in unmarked graves.
People can't process the idea that people like us could actually condone and go along with something that is so plainly wrong and inhumane, and yet they did.
But the trail offers hope for the future. With the Reconciliation Statue, it memorializes the transatlantic slave trade, and there are 2 identical statues in Liverpool, England, and Benin, Africa. The Richmond Slave Trail gives you a chance to feel what many of our ancestors, these enslaved people, experienced. And Edwards says it's a lesson we all should never forget.
It resonates more. People accept it better. And then you begin to figure out how you reconcile with it.
Staying in central Virginia tonight, tucked away 40 miles west of downtown Richmond, sits a former plantation called Belmead. The plantation became the site of 2 black Catholic boarding schools, both of which have been closed now for more than 50 years. Now alumni are working to keep the school's legacy alive. One former student says the nuns were key to pushing for equal rights in Virginia, which made the school a target for the KKK.
There was a period of time when the rioters came on campus, but the nuns stood their ground, and then the cadets from St. Emma, they came over with their rifles and protected us.
St. Emma's remains the nation's only black military academy. Robert Walker says it's prepared him for the Marine Corps. He chronicled his experience in his book, The Black Military Academy on the James River.
The military training that I got there helped prepare me. And when I was in boot camp at Parris Island, I got promoted. And I was one of the very few recruits that actually marched the platoon around.
With desegregation and the loss of funding, St. Francis closed in 1970. St. Emma shut down 2 years later. Both schools together educated nearly 15,000 students.
Now taking a trip down to the 757, siblings from Chesapeake, Virginia are making history. According to research from the Navy Recruitment's Office, Ariane, Andrea, and Adrian, Sutton are the first black triplets to join the Navy together. Their parents were also in the Navy, making this a whole family affair. In fact, the children's father, Andre, was inspired by his kids joining, so he decided to re-enlist himself.
That's pretty cool. Well, a woman born in Roanoke is known for playing a huge role in medical research around the nation. Stick around, coming up, a glimpse at the statue being made in honor of Henrietta Lacks and the artist behind it.
Welcome back to our annual Honoring Black History Month special. You know, Roanoke is home to the first hospital to train African-American nurses. Now, it was also the only one in the state to do so, Charmaine, from 1922 through 1933.
WFXR's Drew Owens reports on the history behind the Burrell Memorial Hospital.
The Burrell Hospital came to be in a divided Roanoke Valley, a time when society was separated by the color of a person's skin.
Segregation was very much alive right here.
It's the same divided society that created a gap in health care for the African American community in Roanoke, a gap that cost the man for which the hospital would be named his life.
Dr. Burrell was not able to have surgery here for a gallbladder attack that he suffered, and he was sent to Freedman's Hospital at Howard University in 1914. Unfortunately, he didn't survive the surgery.
Dr. Nathaniel L. Bishop had surgery at Burrell as a small child and would eventually return to work as the executive director at the Burrell Nursing Center. He's even written about the history of the hospital. Dr. Bishop believes that Dr. Burrell's death, along with the events of the time, served as a catalyst for doctors in the community to realize the need for accessible health care.
In 1918 and the pandemic of that year, that really served as a catalyst for the city of Roanoke, working with the African American community. They acquired the former Allegheny Children's Home and transformed it into a hospital building.
The hospital would grow to become a critical part of the black community in Roanoke, equipped with some of the latest medical conveniences of the time.
It provided employment opportunities but then those persons served as leaders in the African American community.
As the years passed and the times changed, a new integrated society was born. According to Virginia Tech Carilion, following the 1965 Medicare laws and Civil Rights Acts, patients began choosing the area hospitals that had opened their doors to African Americans. And in 1978, Borough Hospital closed its doors. The hospital's location and building would take on new forms and purposes over the years, but the history and the years of service to the community still live on to this day. In Roanoke, Drew Ungst, WFXR News.
Thank you so much, Drew. Now, back in 2001, the Blue Ridge Behavioral Health Care Center collaborated with Carilion to turn the historic facility into an integrated behavioral health care service center.
And the city of Roanoke reached a major milestone when announcing the production of the Henrietta Lacks statue that will be placed downtown very soon. Well, the sketch for the statue was recently unveiled during a ceremony with the Lacks family and city leaders. Amanda Lee has more from the artist behind it and his mission to help diversify Roanoke.
I can remember going to Hurt Park and stuff, playing basketball and things like that.
26-year-old Bryce Cobbs reflects on the days when he and his family moved around, living in almost every area of the city.
I lived in this house actually for a number of years, and our family went to this church, Morning Star Baptist.
One thing that never changed, his passion for artistic expression.
I've always just done art just because I love to do art, and it was never really about trying to be forcibly making impacts and doing things, but it's kind of like where art took me.
His love for creativity went from a passion to a hobby to a full-time career, mainly focusing on digital art and oil paints.
This one is definitely really, really close to my heart.
Most recently, Cobbs caught the attention of Roanoke City leaders and the family of Henrietta Lacks, who tasked him with capturing her image for a sculpture that would not only be seen by thousands, but it would stand for the importance of diversity and justice for years to come.
It was tough at first. It was an adjustment. I had to really try to capture her essence and who I felt like she was.
Henrietta Lacks was an African-American woman born in Roanoke in 1920. She became well known after her cancer cells were taken by doctors for medical research without her consent. They were the first immortalized human cells that are still being used by doctors today in medical research.
And so I really wanted her to be really dignified and respected and look like she was really strong and assertive, because I felt like that type of energy will bring people closer to her.
The sculpture will stand tall in Lacks Plaza, formerly Lee Plaza, named after Robert E. Lee. His statue was removed. Cobbs hopes this will show other people of color in Roanoke that their voices and their presence are valuable.
I learned early on that we just don't have the same opportunities given to us, and seeing a lot of people in my community just not have the same chances that were gifted to our counterparts.
Cobbs says he never expected his passion to have such an impact, and he hopes it encourages other young artists to paint or sketch their own future. Reporting in Roanoke, Amanda Lee, WFXR News.
But that statue is scheduled to be mounted in Lacks Plaza this fall.
Now, staying in Roanoke, a local icon is being honored right in her own neighborhood. Estelle McCadden, founder of the Virginia State Neighborhood Conference, lived right around the corner from a park in Northwest Roanoke that will soon bear her name. WFXR's Rianne Lowndes tells us how she earned this recognition.
Kennedy Park in Northwest is being renamed for a local icon, an advocate, a leader, an educator, and a neighbor.
The renaming of this park and the development of this park is going to reinvigorate our community here, the northwest side of town.
That's exactly what Estelle McCadden would have wanted.
People were leaving the community, so she founded or co-founded the Melrose Rugby Neighborhood Forum, and then after that she saw how 8 other states had progressed by having a statewide organization, so she founded the Virginia Statewide Neighborhood Conference.
But before starting the Commonwealth's Neighborhood Conference, McCadden was a teacher. Her son, Mac, was one of the first students to attend an integrated school in Roanoke and says his mother, a home ec teacher, played a pivotal role in integrating teaching.
When she went to Lee Junior High School in 1968 or 69, when they integrated that school, she was very prominent in bringing that home economics department together. And I don't think that people in Roanoke understand how much she had to do with the integration process in Roanoke City schools. She used that. She never talked about black-white. She talked about You as a person have this opportunity, take advantage of it. If not, we'll get you there.
But McCadden isn't just remembered for what she did. The NAACP's Brenda Hale and Roanoke Mayor Sherman Lee remember her for who she was.
She was seen, she was heard, and she was so well respected. And she had this innate ability to make people listen to her.
That was the thing that impressed me more about her, is her commitment and dedication to families and neighborhoods. I'm just fortunate that I came along during a time where she was raring to go with the neighborhoods. She was a tremendous leader.
And it's something that you can't erase. So many times they tried to erase the history of what African Americans do, especially black women.
They say when you're an icon like McCadden, your legacy lives on. And that's exactly what they're hoping to do with Estelle McCadden Park.
Here, right here, the development of this park into something which our neighbors can see and can participate in, that's where she is. That's what she wanted. And she would say right now, that's what I'm talking about.
I could just see her smiling now. Okay, they're doing it right now. They're getting it right.
In Roanoke, Rian Lowndes, WFXR News.
Thanks so much, Rian. Now, Estelle McCadden sadly passed away last January at the age of 95. She was honored in the Virginia House of Delegates after her death, and they called her, quote, a queen of neighborhoods of the Commonwealth whose passion and dedication left an outsized impact on the community.
Well, still to come, slavery in Appalachia. We take you inside the new museum, looking back on the region's past and connecting residents to their family history. Stay with us. Welcome back. Statistics from the 1860 census show the population of Pulaski County was around 5,000 people. The black population was more than 1,000 people with 155 slave owners. There were 3 plantations in the Pulaski County area that had over 50 slaves each. WFXR's Kelsey Jean-Baptiste takes a look at the history of slavery in Appalachia and the New River Valley.
She was sold to Salas in 1792, and her mother and the two brothers were sold to Conrad Wall in the same year.
Being a descendant of slaves.
My mother's people were slaves of John Blair Radford and slaves of James Salas and Jacob Zoll.
That's what Radford resident Sarah Carter uncovered after digging for many years through her family's history. Although there's more to the story.
It amazed me how many people don't know that Appalachia had slavery.
Executive Director at the Glencoe Museum and Gallery, Scott Gardner, says the topic of slavery in Appalachia is a subject that is not well known because many falsely believe that it did not exist in the mountains.
Slavery was a part of the fabric of this community from the very beginning, and that enslaved people did help build this region.
Through a grant from Virginia Humanities, the museum opened Slavery in Appalachia, looking at the history from its beginning to its abolition. And to help break down the complicated history of slavery, a historian panel discussion was held during the unveiling.
The story has it there was a merchant in Petersburg, Virginia. His last name was Wood. And he commissioned two men to travel to the west to look for the passage to the Pacific Ocean. They came back multiple times, and they would come back, they would bring slaves.
There was a high concentration of wealth, much like we see today, and those were the ones who did own the majority of slaves.
As early as 1782, something like 8 or 9% of the total population was enslaved. That's actually a higher population of African Americans than you have today in the New River Valley.
When I look back over what they overcome, it makes me proud of the things that they have accomplished.
Historians took the community through the earliest years of European settlement in Virginia through the decade leading up to the Civil War, even discussing some of the hard truths about slavery.
African Americans were bought and sold. They were given as gifts. They were treated as property.
Not having enough clothing, very substandard living conditions.
If they accosted a white person, there would be punishments. Beatings and floggings happen. They're on record in Pulaski County.
Other topics were discussed, like some masters treating their slaves somewhat nicely, the slave code laws, many people not wanting to leave their masters even after slavery was abolished, and the transition into segregation and racism that many African Americans or Black people face today. And even in this dark history, Sarah Carter says, it teaches about courage.
I see where I got my strength from, and I want to continue to be strong and full of willpower as they were.
In Radford, Kelsey Jean-Baptiste, WFXR News.
And since the launch, the exhibit is opened indefinitely, so there will be plenty of opportunities for you to view it. For more information, you can go to the Glencoe Museum and Gallery website.
Now, the Legacy Museum of African American History is going into its 23rd year of showcasing local African American heritage in hopes of sharing the history and culture to inspire future generations and honor the generations before. WFXR's Haley Connor was at the museum and has more.
Our history is your history. Now that's the motto of the Legacy Museum of African American History here in Lynchburg.
People come in and say, oh, I can remember running up and down that staircase as a little child.
That's one of the reasons the Legacy Project transformed a 100-year-old house into a modern museum to keep the museum's location in a traditional African American community. Museum board members and staff say before the museum opened, there was a lack of discussion around local African American contributions to the region.
It was the only opportunity for them to really talk about and display and really invite people in to discuss some of the issues and some of the history, the local history, that had been overlooked.
They want to honor the many African Americans who were the backbone for many institutional opportunities for future generations.
These exhibits that we have up kind of reflects that, to show our challenges that we had as coming up as persons of color and where we've come from and where we're going.
The museum makes visitors feel proud that homegrown individuals achieved such recognition.
So I think we really serve as a source of inspiration for people.
I think it's a source of pride. I think that the younger generation can come in and see, you know, what accomplishments people have made.
Since 2019, the museum's theme has been the development of an athlete framing sports through race, gender, perseverance, and community. From past players in the National Negro Baseball League to present athletes competing in professional sports, the exhibit features the best local athletes who have broken boundaries. Audrey Lennon, mother of former NFL player Paris Lennon, says she is proud that her family is able to be a part of the museum.
I think it's a great thing. The younger generation know nothing about the accomplishments, you know, of other people before them. And I think it's a wonderful thing. They can go and see it and take pride in where they're from.
Even though this is the last year for this exhibit, museum curators and board members continue to work with the community to recognize local pioneers.
It's a place where you'll be surprised, you'll be energized, and you'll be grateful that you spent the time and effort to come.
Now they hope to have the next exhibit open by November of 2023. Reporting in Lynchburg, Haley Connor, WFXR News.
Thanks so much, Haley. Now, throughout Black History Month, the Legacy Museum of African American History will be showing a video every Sunday afternoon about Lynchburg's history and the community's effort to cross over the racial divide.
Well, still to come, a local school administrator is getting some national attention and recognition. A look at his award-winning essay highlighting a local World War II veteran. Stay with us.
Welcome back to our Honoring Black History Month special. You know, the Salem School District Administrator Dr. Forrest Jones earns national recognition for an essay he wrote about a local African-American World War II veteran.
Absolutely. This story was pretty interesting. The essay entitled William Dabney, I wasn't afraid of the D-Day invasion, but I didn't think I would come out alive, is now printed on Writer's Digest. And Dr. Jones was awarded an honorable mention for this essay in his work. I sat down with him to discuss this honor.
I saw him drop and ran.
I dropped down with them. I was alive and got up kind of under a dead soldier.
This recorded conversation with World War II veteran and Roanoke native Mr. William Dabney expresses much like a fireside chat.
The commanding officer told us, say some of y'all won't return.
Dr. Forrest Jones gives the D-Day war veteran his full attention.
Listening to him describe, like you said, the barrage balloons, the cables, being the anchor man, it was like, wow, you could visualize it.
To capture such rich, first-hand accounts of the D-Day invasion of Normandy, to say the least, was a blessing. Mr. Dabney didn't share his story much because not many people believed his old war stories, and most history books don't mention much, if anything at all, about black soldiers in this war. Dr. Jones wanted to change that.
If you look back in history books, even me being a history major, you did not see his story in history books. So it was great for people like Mr. Dabney to actually say, hey, I was there. Let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you what I did.
All that Mr. Dabney did was recognized. Years later, he was awarded the Legion of Honor in France.
Him winning the Legion of Honor in France, being able to go to Paris and being able to talk to President Obama and Tom Hanks and, other dignitaries, I think that really just gave him a sense of pride of what he did.
And Dr. Jones wanted to share that story with the world, so he wrote an essay about Mr. Dabney and submitted it to Writer's Digest.
I think there are a lot of Mr. Dabneys that we don't know about. You want to bring those stories out. You want more people to hear those stories. And again, it goes back to there are probably others that we don't know about that we need to dig in and bring those stories to light.
Dr. Jones's story won an honorable mention for the honorable World War II D-Day veteran, Mr. Dabney.
I tell you, that was just an interesting story. I mean, to share a story of, a lot of times we don't know these stories, and to share it is great.
Yeah, you haven't a clue what's right here in our backyard. Some phenomenal African Americans doing some phenomenal things.
Good deal. Well, I tell you what, thank you so much for joining us for this year's Honoring Black History Month special.
Absolutely. Stick with us, folks. WFXR News at 6 is next. Make it a great night.